Welcome to this week's Ask EMBN show. I'm joined with Doddy from EMBN Tech. We've got loads of questions this week, so let's get into it.
So first up is from Strikeforce MTB. If you've got an eMTB and a regular MTB that's got the same geometry, would they handle similarly? I understand the weight difference, but how close can the handling characteristics be?
Well, good question. Well, I swap around, quite a lot between e-bike and regular bike as well. But they're quite similar geometry. The biggest difference that I feel with the e-bike compared to a normal bike is obviously going to be that weight. And the weight translate out on the trail to actually a good thing. You're hitting those corners with a lot more grip. The bike's a lot more stable. But some people, if you're swapping between the two, I think that weight sometimes becomes a bit of a hindrance on the lower speed sort of tech maneuvers and slowing it down as well. You come into some sections, as I mentioned, really fast, but actually slowing those bikes down does become a bit harder. So it's just adjusting your riding style, but it definitely doesn't take away any, good points of the bike. It's definitely a plus for me. I find an e-bike will actually handle all that stuff a lot better than a standard regular trail bike.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It does, although I'm probably in nearer states to yourself that I don't ride an e-bike as much as you do. So going between the two is a bit more of a problem for me.
Yeah.
Definitely what you said about the braking, 100%. Coming into stuff, you've got to stand on those brakes literally to get to slow down. But then there's so much more grip.
Definitely. I thought, as I mentioned, all those situations, I would prefer to be on an e-bike, whereas probably Doddy would find it easier, is switching between the two. But definitely a similar ride feel. And I think if you're jumping the bikes as well, jumping is definitely an art form when it comes to an e-bike. Some people find it harder, but personally, I think once you get into it, you'll find yourself jumping a lot more confidence. I think the confidence inspiring, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it is. It's like kind of like riding an old downhill bike.
Exactly.
It's got that weight, the stability and stuff.
Definitely. But yeah, give it a go on the trail, and I don't think, you will struggle at all.
Okay, next up's from David Hill. Hi guys, I'm thinking about putting a Speedbox 2 chip on my Bosch motor. Just wondering what you think. Have you tried one? Do they work? Will they damage the motor and battery? Any info would be great. So that's chipping, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. So that's removing that limiter on the bike. So obviously the Bosch unit is, it's a great motor, but it really does struggle above that 15.9 or 25 kilometers an hour limit. So fitting one of the Speedbox unit is something that I have done in the past on Bosch. It is a good unit. It's a little bit less well protected. It's just basically a clip-on unit that goes over the speed
like
sensor.
A dongle type thing.
Yeah, like a dongle. So it just holds on with a rubber O-ring over the speed sensor. But it's quite susceptible to like water damage, and it can fall off if you're going to ride that bike under, like big jumps and things like that.
I did ride. I don't know if it was a Bosch system, but I did ride a chipped one a little while back. I noticed I found it really confusing because the information is displayed on the monitor is completely inaccurate, and you have no idea where you were with the battery.
And
so it felt cool, but I don't know if it's a way.
Yeah, definitely. But I think what Doddy's saying is basically if you're doing 20 mile an hour down the trail, it will half the speed limit. So it'll say you're doing 10, so it confuses the motor. But obviously the distance you're riding, the range, it's all going to be scrambled.
Of course, like Bosch in particular, they're going to be quite strict on their warranty, and they will know if you've put a dongle in. So you're kind of on your own if you want to take that risk.
Yeah.
Certainly if you're riding your bike on the road, don't chance it. It's against the law, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Off-road, then all right, arguably you could see some advantages.
Yeah.
But what I've heard Jonesy saying actually is if you're going over that limit too often, perhaps you need to address the way you're riding trails. Maybe ride the trails backwards, ride, not a marked trail that is, but try approaching the way you ride differently because you don't really need that limit.
So basically what we're saying is that you steer clear of limiters. It's going to cause you issues with warranty, and as Doddy says, just look at where you're riding if you really need to de-restrict that e-bike.
Right, next one's from Ian Wright. I can't imagine it's the footballer. He says, with the recent cold weather, there's snow, I went out to Avon for a blast, and a spare battery on my Focus Jam 2 would switch on and then just die. Is this down to a safety setting as it's too cold? The frame battery worked a treat. So I'm guessing it means the one that was initially powering the motor because that's keeping warm, and the other one
exposed
wasn't doing its job. Right.
So you're probably using that tech pack on your Focus as well, so you've got an exposed battery under the top tube. So batteries are a hell of a lot just like us. They like to be warm, and if you expose them to extreme cold or extreme heat, they're not going to like it. If you're going out for a cold ride, I'd probably suggest charging your battery indoors. It's all about trying to keep that core temperature in the battery. When you're out on the trails, try like a neoprene cover. That should help keep a bit of warmth in the battery. Or you can bodge it with some foil as well. That's meant to keep a bit of battery heat in there as well. There is other options out there on things like Amazon. You can get a body support, something like a back support, modify that. It's a cheap alternative to those custom batteries.
Do a hack video on it actually. That's probably a good idea. I think it's the same with all batteries in general. Like I know from taking photos, I keep spare batteries on inside pockets and stuff for exactly exactly the same reason. But I guess on your particular bike, you've got 2 batteries on the frame. So yeah, I reckon doing some sort of wrap. Failing that, if it is that bad and it's only an occasional ride that you're going to ride in those sort of conditions, take that battery off and put it in your bag.
Yeah, it's a good option, yeah, definitely.
All right, this one's a bit more of a personal one, Chris, from Scott. He says, Chris, you're back. How's the new baby boy, baby girl? You're out on maternity leave, right?
Yeah, I was out for a couple of weeks. 3 weeks ago now. We've just had a little boy, so it brings the family members up to 3 now. So yeah,
wow, 3 baby factories going on there.
Yeah, hitting the trails on them. Got a few that are already riding, but yeah, keen to get him on 2 wheels ASAP.
I think you need to do some videos with them down the line. Maybe wait till a little bit stronger if we're chucking on an e-bike. All right, this one's a bit more focused back. So this is from Quad Kid. He's got a Focus Jam 2 Plus 2018. Wondering if I should make my bike tubeless and maybe if I should change the tyres on it. What do you reckon?
Doddy, you've got to be the man to talk about tubeless setups, right?
I would always say go for tubeless. Yeah. Personally, I think inner tubes, I would rather grow gills and walk backwards into the sea. I just think it's just old technology. We don't need it. You only carry them as a spare part. Tubeless is fantastic. But it does require more maintenance than people think.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I'd definitely swap out to tubeless. Personally, I haven't had tubes on a bike for years now, and I haven't had a puncture for years. As soon as I did ride a bike with tubes in, I actually had 2 punctures that day, so it shows. Yeah, definitely I'd recommend swapping over to tubeless. But your tyre choice, what you mentioned as well, I would have a look, see if it's fit for purpose. You know, if you are just riding easy sort of trails, and a shallow tread design is going to last you a lot longer and give you a lot more range than sticking a big, aggressively fat, knobby tyre on there if you're not doing that sort of riding, and vice versa. If you're hitting muddy trails and proper off-road mountain biking, then sticking an aggressive tyre on there is going to reap a lot of benefits out there on the trail. Yeah, if you're unsure about your tyre choice and this thing that's going to be best for you, speak to some other local riders, whether they're e-bikers or not, and you'll find there'll be a pretty general consensus on the sort of tyre or specific design or brand that people use, and that'd be a good sort of starting point to start looking at your own choices. All right, so 60 Seconds to Stevens says, how much air pressure do you recommend for jumping on an e-bike? Running 2.8 tyres at the moment. Good question. Yeah, jumping, obviously I do quite a bit of that. On the e-bike, I'd really suggest probably a minimum of around 40 psi. So that obviously sounds quite a lot of pressure if you're doing normal sort of trail riding. But running a harder tyre, it's going to give you a lot more predictability on takeoffs. You're not going to get tyre squirm. And of course, if you case a jump with a soft tyre, it's going to run a damage in your rim. Just a lot better to run a harder tyre for those big jumps. It's going to increase the rolling resistance as well between jumps. So you're going to be hitting jumps a lot faster. I know guys like Pilgrim and those guys on the e-bike generally run sort of 40 to 60 psi, and even on the hardtail jump bikes, they're running up to 100 psi on those bikes as well. So don't be afraid to pump up your tyres. But obviously, if you're running tubeless, I personally wouldn't go above, I think about 55 would be my max. I've had a nasty experience of one blowing off the rim when I've increased that pressure, literally blowing up in my face, tyre sealant going everywhere. I'm sure you've had that sort of thing before, right? Yeah, 100%. There's always guidelines on your tyre sidewalls of your pressures. Now, even the upper one of that, you can test it and go a bit higher. That's just the safe recommended, but you can explore it, I think. Also, something else, when you were saying about the tyre squirming, if you're into jumping that, surely some sort of rimmings at a Cush Core, a New Privard, something like that would be pretty useful for protecting the rim and keeping those tyres in place. All right, this one's pretty cool. This is from Alexander Seasink. Hi, I've been plagued by flats one time too many, so I've gone tubeless with knobby nicks on my Focus Jafira. Now, I wonder how the Dock Blue sealant will handle -7 Celsius we have at the moment in Germany. Anything to consider when using sealant in the cold? Thanks for the show. Got to love learning so much while having fun watching. Cheers. I think it's the same with any sealant, regardless of the one you've got. I mean, generally, the better sealants tend to be the more sort of latex formulated ones, like the Dock Blue is similar like that, Stans, any of those, but they do tend to dry out, and that happens in both cold temperatures and hot temperatures. So, I mean, personally, I like that style solution, so I just use more of it. And you do have to top up more often than you think. I don't know about you, but what I don't like doing when I replace my sealant is taking the tyre off. I take the valve core out and I use a little syringe basically to squirt in more. And you can also see how much you're putting in. It also means you don't break the seal as well, so it stays on the rim. And then you can get a lot of other solutions. They don't have the latex sort of formula in them, and they resist. They've got more anti-freezing. They resist freezing. However, they don't seal punctures as well. So. I think you might find a problem if you go to like super extreme temperatures, but as Doddy mentioned, a lot of them have like an antifreeze in them. I think it works to about -40 Fahrenheit or something like that. So you shouldn't have a problem in those temperatures that you've mentioned. Just generally a little bit more lube if you want the slightly better style lube, or if you want a safety, go for the more antifreeze friendly
option. Choice is yours, really.
Yeah, but definitely remember to keep on top of that. It's, a lot of people think that tubeless is a fit and forget thing that you do to your tyres, but you really need to be on top of that, changing them every few months, especially if you're living in quite a hot area. Those tyres will dry out a lot and you just be left with a clump of sealant in your tyre rolling around, which won't repair any punctures.
And actually, a good point, you can hear them as well. So if you take your wheels off time to time and give them a bit of a jiggle, if you hear some sloshing, you're good to go. If you don't hear anything, it might be a good time to either inspect it or just top up on the solution.
Might even have a stanimal in there. They're known as the little balls rolling around in there.
Like a big bogey, isn't it? Yeah. All right, straight into Ralph N. Loving the show. I've seen every episode. Before my current Spectral On, I had a Cube Stereo 120, which I used with clip pedals. With my eMTB experience, I've got some difficulty of drive on steep and technical terrain because I can't clip in fast enough. Soon as I want to improve wheeling and manuals, do you think switching to flat pedals is a better idea for e-mountain bikes?
Personally, when I ride a regular bike, I used to ride clip pedals for more trail, cross-country riding and flats for everything else. But since I've ridden e-bikes, I've been pretty much a 99% flat pedal user. I think with the e-bike's power and the motor, it sort of negates that need for an efficient cadence and spin all the time. I know it does obviously help with range and things like that, but I think the added power that you get from the e-bike just pretty much negates the need of clips for me. But I know guys like Doddy, you use clip pedals quite a bit for more your riding. But I think for like the trick style of riding, like you mentioned, the wheelies and manuals, personally, I wouldn't be going anywhere near that with a set of clips on. It just, especially if you're learning, you need to get your feet out really quickly. It's going to give you a lot more confidence. But I'm sure Doddy will talk a bit more about using clips versus flats.
Well, yeah, I ride both quite happily, but I'll pick clips like 9 times out of 10. And when I went riding with Jonesy last summer, I picked clips, and this was a first sort of experience for me, and that was a huge mistake in hindsight because getting used to the bike, used to when the power kicks in, all that sort of stuff, it was too much on top of it, and it sounds like you're having the same sort of problems. So I would suggest running flats actually, and then once you're used to the bike, you know exactly what the bike's doing in all circumstances. Then you could go back and make the most of clips because there's a lot of rides like Fabian Burrell and Nico. They both continue using clips, and arguably they're two of the best climbers on the most technical terrain. So they're clearly using them to their benefit.
Definitely, you have to. I think your confidence levels really have to be up there to use clips on an e-bike. I think, as you mentioned, all the style of riding it looks like you're doing. I think try some flats, and you can always go back and switch between for whatever you're doing.
And to be honest, that's a good way of riding a bike actually. Chopping and changing, it makes you a better rider all round.
Yeah, because definitely clips can actually lead you into some bad habits. I know like guys that do sort of bunny hops and things actually rely a lot on using that clip pedal action. It's actually a bad technique to get into. If you switch across the flats, you find yourself not actually being able to bunny hop. So switching between, keeping it fresh, means you can commit to corners with flats a bit better. You can stick a foot down if it's slidey, but then you're not going to get that power out on the trails. It's vice versa. You just try both. I'm sure you come up with that, that good option.
Next one's from Arc 1980. Great show. You've convinced me to get rid of my dirt bike and get an e-mountain bike. Nice. Should arrive this week. Most brands seem to offer the same frame and motor, but different components as they go up in spec. I've got an entry-level Focus Jam 2 with the intention to upgrade as required. My question is, what benefit will I get with more expensive components like forks, drivetrain, etc.? So we get this question literally every single week.
Exactly, it's a good question. But I think the Focus Jam 2 that you've got is a really good bike out of the box. There's not a lot, I think that you need to be upgrading. Upgrading's always a good question. It's like, I always like to think about upgrading is like, am I better than the bike? Am I, better than my bike suspension? I think if you're running into problems on your bike out on the trails, then it's time to upgrade. If you find these suspensions like topping out and making horrible noises and you're doing better things than your bike can do for you, then you should look at upgrading. But I don't think planting a load of money in a set of carbon wheels for your e-bike is like a big upgrade.
No, don't do that.
I think you just need to get out there and look at what you're riding and choose, what are the weak points on your bike. But don't go swapping stuff every single month because you're never going to know where you are on the bike. If you keep messing around with like your bar height and different handlebars and things like that, you're never going to, get to know that bike. And I think being at one with your bike is a really important thing rather than keep swapping bits and upgrading bits.
100%, yeah. And something that's really important to say actually is a lot of your bike components are consumable items. They're going to wear out sooner or later. So if you do want to spend some money, spend it on your tyres when they're worn out. Don't do it now. Same goes with your transmission. Wear it out first.
Yeah.
There's no need to spend money on it.
Yeah.
Other items like your suspension, like Chris says, you're not going to know what a job they're doing until you really get used to the bike. So save that, and you can always get them tuned when you get them serviced at some point down the line.
Yeah.
Just don't spend the money yet. Get used to the bike.
I think a good, if you've got money burning a hole in your pocket, I'd maybe look at doing some coaching, some trail sort of training, stuff like that, rather than spending all that money on a fancy new rear mech and chain, because that's going to translate out on the trail a lot better than trying to upgrade and lose a few pounds here and there on your e-bike. I think obviously those cheaper bits that you mentioned, like might be entry level on your Focus, are actually going to be a lot more durable as well, because they're going to be a little bit stronger. They're going to be heavier. They're not going to wear as much. Like the high-end stuff, components is usually made out of like a lightweight cassette. The cheaper options have things like steel in there, which is obviously going to last a lot longer. But you go to the lightweight stuff and it's going to burn. It's going to wear out a lot quicker out there. So
essentially, what Chris is saying is, don't waste your money yet. Get to know your bike. That's the most important thing. And if you do have to spend money, think about it.
So there you go. That's the end of our Ask EMBN. And thanks, Doddy, for joining us here today on the show.
Cheers for having me.
Don't forget, if you guys got any questions, hashtag Ask EMBN. Drop them in the comments box below and we'll get back to you ASAP.
Yeah, if you want to see another useful video, click down here and it's all about the best upgrades you can do with the all-new e-bikes.
Don't forget, if you've enjoyed today's show, give us a thumbs up, drop some comments, and don't forget to click the link in the middle of the screen to subscribe to EMBN.